see here, we have 3 bottles in our fermentation vessels. These are glass fermentation vessels called carboys. I have an original recipe here of an American ale. I call it Tim's All-American Ale. I have an Irish Stout that I bought from a kit from Midwest Brewing Supplies. And I have an Amber Ale original recipe over here that I call Tim's Special Release. We're going to be bottling 2 of these today, and we're going to be kegging 1 of them today. We're going to start with the bottling process. What you're going to need to bottle is you're going to need a transfer bucket. If it's got a spigot on it, that's great. You're going to need a carboy transfer tube. You're going to need a bottler. You're going to need a transfer tube. You're going to need a hydrometer and graduated cylinder for measuring the specific gravity of the beer, and that way you can determine its alcohol content. And you're going to need some of this, some priming sugar. If you're putting it in the bottle, that's going to help you get carbonated. Of course, if you look over here, you'll see that you're going to need some sanitized bottles. In addition to the aforementioned equipment, we're of course going to need bottle caps, a stirring spoon, and a bottle capper. Alright, the first beer that we're going to be bottling today is my Tim's All-American Ale. The first thing that we need to do in the bottling process is to get this siphon, this carboy siphon, and we attach this where the airlock used to be in the carboy. So I'm going to pull this airlock off and immediately put this on to avoid any sort of contamination that may happen. You don't want to push the siphon all the way down to the sediment on the bottom. You just want it in enough to be able to start the siphoning process. This is our bottling bucket, and what we're going to do is we're going to transfer all the beer out of the carboy into the bottling bucket, and we're going to add our priming sugar, and we're going to mix it, and we're going to bottle from the bottling bucket rather than from the carboy, and that's going to give us a cleaner, clearer product. The way that you start the transfer is you increase the pressure on the inside of the carboy by blowing into the cap of the carboy siphon tool, and it should start a siphon action. Now that we have the siphon working as advertised and automatically siphoning all of the beer out of our carboy and into our bottling bucket, this is the time that we want to take and fill up our graduated cylinder with the completed beer, and that way we can take a specific gravity measurement to determine what the alcohol content is going to be. Alcohol content can be determined by a simple equation of initial gravity minus final gravity times 131, and that'll give you a pretty good estimate of what the alcohol content of your beer is going to be. Throughout the transfer process from the carboy into the bottling bucket, you want to make sure that you keep the bottom of the transfer tube up out of the sediment that's in the bottom of the carboy. As we get close to the bottom of the siphoning process, we're going to tilt our carboy just a little bit, not so much as disturb the sediment on the bottom of the carboy, but just enough so that we can get the last of the clear beer out of there. Alright, what we're going to do now is we're going to measure our specific gravity by using a hydrometer and graduated cylinder. Make sure as you drop the hydrometer in, you spin it, and that's going to give you the most accurate result. If you don't spin it, it's going to have a tendency to stick to one of the sides, and you're not going to get the proper reading. What we're looking at right here is 1.010. We're going to take that number and we are going to calculate from our initial gravity to what our actual alcohol content is going to be. Alright, after calculating our initial gravity, which was 1.064, and our final gravity, which was 1.010, that gives us a difference of 0.054. You multiply that by 131, and in this case it comes up to be 7.074, and that should be our percent alcohol. After you've taken your hydrometer reading, this is also a very good chance to sample your beer, and it'll give you an initial idea of how it's going to come out. Of course, the carbonation is going to change the flavor and definitely the texture a little bit, but this will give you an idea if it started to sour while it was in the carboy, which is something you don't want to happen. It's a very good flavor, no souring at all, so I anticipate that this is going to be a good beer. This is our priming sugar here. I've added it to just a little bit more than half a cup of water to dissolve the priming sugar. And what we're going to do is we're going to add that priming sugar to the bucket and mix it with our sterilized spoon right now. This will give the yeast a little bit of extra food that they can work off while it's in the bottle, and that is going to provide our carbonation for us. As the yeast eat the sugar, they breathe out carbon dioxide. It's going to pressurize the inside of the bottle, and it's going to cause our beer to become carbonated. What we have here is a bottler. This is a spring-loaded transfer mechanism. What you do is you stick this down to the bottom of the bottle. As it does, it depresses this pawl right here, and it'll allow for the fluid to flow out of our bottling bucket into the container, which is going to prevent a lot of carbon dioxide and oxygen from the outside air from getting into there, which would help to cause spoiling. So I recommend, if you don't have one of these, getting one of these bottling tools. It certainly makes the job a lot easier and a lot cleaner. Press down, fill up the bottle, pull it out, move on to your next bottle. The bottling, you have to cap your bottles as soon as you get the beer into there to avoid any sort of contamination. So at this point, it really is beneficial to have two people in the bottling process, and it makes it go much smoother. For this beer, I'm going to be bottling 6 of the beers into 22-ounce bottles, and the remainder of the beer I'm going to be bottling into 12-ounce bottles. For the capper, we just hold the bottle in place, press down, automatically seats the cap. As you can see, I've gone with an American flag cap for an all-American ale. Down to the 12-ounce bottles. A lot of people will tell you not to bottle your beer into a clear bottle because they're afraid that it's, the UV light is going to cause your beer to come out skunky. I personally have never had a problem with that, but I don't store my beer in the sun, and I can't think of anybody who does. So as long as you don't store your beer outside or in the sun, I believe that putting it into a clear bottle is not a problem at all. As you can see, we have a bottle on standby waiting. So as soon as the first bottle is filled, she can immediately move over and start filling up the second bottle. That prevents any spillage or dripping while you're waiting to pull another bottle out of the container. Alright, as you can see, we've gotten a yield of 36 12-ounce bottles and 6 22-ounce bottles. That's the equivalent of 2 cases of 12-ounce bottles. And that is about the average of what we get out of a carboy. Sometimes we'll get about 1 6-pack more, but this is about the average of the yield that I get. And it ends up being somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 and 95 cents a bottle, which is a slight savings over what you would get in the store, but not too much. People really tend to homebrew because they can make the beer taste the way that they want it to taste, which is why I homebrew. I don't do it for a significant savings in money, but it does tend to save a little bit. As you can see, the remnants of our carboy that had the American ale in it is quite dirty. There's a whole bunch of material that's collected on top from when it was foaming up in the Corson. Got all over the top, and down along the bottom, as you can see, there's this disgusting matter here. It's called a yeast cake. And the Australians actually make a sandwich out of it called a Vegemite sandwich. And some people really, really love it, but I couldn't even imagine eating one. But as you can see, the carboy in and of itself is very dirty, and we're going to have to do a real good job of cleaning it. The things that you're going to need to clean it are a carboy brush that's going to be able to get most of the particulate off, and then you're going to need some paper towels. And I will show you in just a few minutes how I use the paper towels to clean out the inside of that. As you can see, the carboy brush, because of its size and shape, is essential for cleaning a fermentation vessel of this size, the carboy. It is best for getting all of this stuff that's up around the top right here. Without the carboy brush, I don't know that you would be able to clean that, so if you are going to start brewing, definitely make sure you invest in a carboy brush, otherwise you'll never be able to get your fermentation vessels clean. Alright, now that we have completed most of the cleaning that we could get with our carboy brush here, I find that the best way to get the last little remnants of sediment that you might have on the inside of it is to take a couple of paper towels, shove them into the carboy, put a little bit of water into the carboy, and then you can shake the carboy up, and this will get all of the surfaces that you're unable to get just by rinsing or with the carboy brush. And then you repeat this exact same process with about a teaspoon of Sea Bright sanitizer, and then just rinse it out until you can no longer smell the bleach smell, and your carboy should be ready for use again. My second batch of the day Tim's Special Release. This is my first truly original recipe where it wasn't just a modification of somebody else's recipe. It's a strong amber ale, and it's one of my favorite beers, and one of the beers that I received the most compliments about. So here we go. And what we have here is Tim's Special Release, all bottled up and ready to go. A couple weeks for carbonation, and it should be one of the best beers that you could ever possibly imagine drinking. Total yield on this was 37 12-ounce bottles, 6 22-ounce bottles. About average yield for one carboy.